Well, welcome to another Friday night. Tonight I want to talk about an aspect of trauma that you may not have heard before, but it's such an important piece to understand. It's called betrayal trauma. And why it's such an important piece to understand is because it's part of complex trauma. So complex trauma is technically different than betrayal trauma, but all complex trauma for children especially contains betrayal trauma. And so for many of you who've gone through complex trauma as children, the trauma is very painful, but it's the betrayal of those that are supposed to love you that don't have your back that's even more painful. And so it's really important to get if one is to get a complete picture of complex trauma, to understand this betrayal part, this betrayal trauma that's included in it. And that's what I want to look at today. And for many of you, I think as I go through this, it's going to actually be kind of painful. It's going to stir up some painful memories of being betrayed by those that were supposed to love you. And so I hope that it also leads to healing, that it helps you better understand some of the dynamics of your trauma and what you can do in practical steps to begin to heal that part of the trauma. So let's begin with a definition of betrayal trauma. So here's kind of a technical one. Betrayal trauma occurs when the people or institutions on which a person depends for survival significantly violate that person's trust or well-being. Betrayal trauma is the result of a violation of deep attachment. So it takes place within attachment relationships. That is so important to understand. So there's an attachment relationship, and then within that relationship, there's abuse or neglect by the person that you're depending on for your safety and well-being. That is betrayal trauma. So you need this person, you attach to this person, and they let you down. So another thing by Sabrina Romanoff from Yeshiva University. Betrayal trauma describes the emotional impact a person experiences after their trust or well-being is violated, either by people or institutions that are significant in their life, institutions that they rely on for survival. This type of trauma usually relates to primary attachment figures like a parent, caregiver, or other important relationships from childhood. In adulthood, it tends to repeat itself among romantic partners. So betrayal trauma then is a term for relational trauma. It's suffered when a person on whom you thought you could rely, a person you thought you could trust and you choose to trust, violates that trust significantly. So a child comes into the world and they have to attach to their parents because they're too little to provide for their own needs. So they need attachment in order to survive. And so they're put in a position of total dependence on these two people that are supposed to love them. But then what happens is these two people don't meet their needs, don't protect them, neglect them, abuse them, they betray that trust. So the more dependent we are on someone and the more we trust them, the more severe the betrayal trauma will be when we are betrayed. So if you think of that again in context of complex trauma, basically all complex trauma includes betrayal trauma, because this child is dependent on these people that are supposed to love them, and then they are hurt, betrayed by them. There's 5 different types of betrayal trauma that have been kind of classified. So number 1, we've been talking about, is parental trauma, when someone who's supposed to love you, someone whom you're dependent abuses you, neglects you, fails to protect you from harm, fails to meet your needs, that is betrayal by the very people, the people that most should have your back, that most should be there for you. That is huge betrayal. Then the second type is an intimate partner, and many of you relate to this. And so you experience betrayal trauma as a child from your parents. You get older, you get in a relationship, and then that partner also betrays you. So somebody who says they love you, somebody who says they want your best, somebody who says they have your back, somebody who says you can trust them, and then they abuse you, they neglect you, they cheat on you, they lie to you, you feel greatly betrayed. And that is really painful. Then you can go beyond intimate partner to just interpersonal relationship betrayal trauma, where you thought you had a trusted friend. You thought you had somebody that you could depend on, and they let you down. They betray your trust. And so it doesn't hurt as much as intimate partner trauma or parental trauma, betrayal trauma, but it still hurts because it is a betrayal. So let me take that one to a fourth category, which for many is very significant, and that is feeling betrayed by God. God betrayal. So you grew up in a religion where you were taught that God would always be there for you. He would protect you. He would answer your prayers if you were a good child. And you heard stories of God doing this for others. But then as a child, you hit a time of crisis. You're sexually abused, you're bullied, you're physically abused. You pray, you expect that this God you're trusting is going to help you, but God does nothing. And you feel totally betrayed by God. That is a severe form of betrayal trauma. The fifth one is institutional trauma. And so it's an institution that you have to depend on for survival. So the government, school, church, but it's an institution that says, kind of maybe even in their model, that this is what they're about, caring for people, helping people, being there for people, teaching people, supporting people, but then they don't live out that in their relationship with you. Another type of institutional trauma is, let's say, somebody within the institution abused you physically, sexually, verbally, emotionally. You report it, but then the institution does nothing about it. They protect the perpetrator. They don't report the crime. That is a type of betrayal trauma. So again, let me just apply this to a common institution that many people feel betrayed by, and that would be the church. And again, a form of spiritual abuse that has a betrayal trauma aspect. So many people have joined a church and were told by the church, we'll love you unconditionally, we accept you just the way you are. And they get involved in the church, and for a while it seems that is true. This has been wonderful, they feel part of, totally accepted, but then all of a sudden something changes. And it can be in kind of two areas. All of a sudden, you challenge their belief system, their dogma. You ask questions. You say you're not sure you fully agree with them. And all of a sudden, you're an outcast. They condemn you. They judge you. You're shunned. Or, let's say that all of a sudden you get a divorce, or you come out that you're gay. And they say, nope, that's not allowed. And all of a sudden you're no longer accepted. You're no longer unconditionally loved. There's all these conditions now if you don't keep their rules, and you're shunned because of that. Or somebody in that church sexually abuses you. And so that's a type of institutional betrayal trauma that sadly many have experience. So let me just give you some more examples that might help just really drive home what I'm talking about with this betrayal trauma. So any type of childhood, physical, emotional, or sexual abuse perpetrated by your caregiver, the person that's supposed to care for you is abusing you. That is betrayal trauma. What many go through in complex trauma is their parents get a divorce. And so all of a sudden, they go to live with one parent, hardly see the other parent. They feel betrayed. They feel let down. They can no longer trust their parents. And that's a type of betrayal. Or their parents say, we can't take care of you anymore, and put them into the foster care system or put them up for adoption. That is a big betrayal that the child feels. Or the child finds out that their parents have been lying to them about stuff, gaslighting them. They have been having a sense that something is a certain way, and their parent says, no, it's not, no, it's not. And then they find out that their gut was telling them the truth. Their parents were gaslighting them. That is a form of betrayal. And so a type of betrayal trauma is when you find out that long-term deceit has been happening within a relationship. Then it's a huge type of betrayal. Another one is that you find out there's been some secrets being kept from you. So they've been doing stuff, but not talking about it, keeping it a secret. That's a form of betrayal. Or you share in confidence with your parents about a struggle, about something going on in your life, and all of a sudden you find out they've been talking to other people about what you shared in confidence. That's betrayal. Or your parents have made promises to you that you're going to do this, they're going to do this for you, and then they break those promises. That's a form of betrayal. Or you thought your parents loved you, and because you're children, that you came ahead of other priorities in their life. But all of a sudden you find out their job is more important than you, their addiction is more important than you, their friends are more important than you. Even strangers can be more important than you. And so there's a huge sense of betrayal that comes out of that. Another one is when family makes fun of you in public. They expose some of your idiosyncrasies, some of your things that they would consider weaknesses, and they make fun of you. That's a serious type of betrayal. Or you've been living with a parent who's been making all these rules and telling you that they're for your best, and then you find out, no, this leader was all about me rather than we. This parent made the rules because it suited them. It had nothing to do with what was best for us, only what was best for them. That's a form of betrayal. Then think of grooming. What happens in grooming? Grooming is actually breaking down natural cautions and inhibitions in a child and getting them to trust. So you give them gifts, you're super nice to them, you do things for them. All of that to get them to trust you, and then you abuse them. Huge betrayal. And then sadly, many of you have gone through infidelity, where you've been in a relationship with a partner who said they've loved you and then they've cheated on you. And that can be physical, cheating on you, or they can have an emotional affair. They can get involved in a relationship with somebody where they're sharing very, very deeply, vulnerably, not telling you much of what's going on in their life, but telling somebody else. That's a deep form of betrayal. Or you find out that your partner is deeply involved in sexual addiction and looking at pornography all the time, and that feels like a great form of betrayal to you as well. Then you're going to get the situation where, let's say somebody has cheated on you, and they come back and they are so sorry, I'll never do it again, give me another chance. And in that time of crisis, they take a program, they get asked for help, they go for counseling, And so you decide, okay, I'll give them another chance. And you do. And it looks for a while like, yeah, they have changed. But then they do it all over again. And it's a second type of betrayal, a second time of betrayal, and it hurts just as bad. Another one many of you went through is if the family kind of saw you as the scapegoat. So if something went wrong, you got blamed for it. Even though you had done nothing wrong, even though it was somebody else's fault, it was made to be your fault. That's a form of betrayal when you're blamed for everybody else's mistakes. The final one I want to give as an example is anytime that you're in a relationship with a narcissist, you will end up betrayed. Because the narcissist doesn't know how to love people, just to use people. The narcissist is ultimately what matters, even though they say they love you and that you matter, well, ultimately what matters to them is they themselves, getting what they want. And so any relationship with a narcissist, you will eventually at some point experience betrayal. So those are a whole bunch of examples that just hopefully help you begin to realize that this has probably been a part of your life, that you've experienced betrayal trauma. So what I think is important to understand is that betrayal trauma is more than just the traumatic event and the pain of that traumatic event. It's a trauma where the pain goes even deeper. It hurts even more. And the question is why? Why does betrayal trauma hurt more than any other trauma? And I think it's due to that bonding, that attachment piece. So somebody has said this: intimate bonding with another person serves an important developmental role. It enhances the child's chances of survival. So a baby comes in, they can't meet their own needs, they need to attach. They need to attach to somebody if they're going to survive, somebody who will meet their needs for them. And so as a result of that, they form this deep emotional connection. And that's the key piece. And so as a result, there are biological substrates that support the formation of psychologically intimate relationships. So betrayal adversely affects these substrates. The psychological injury of betrayal is likely to create, in a sense, a functional physical injury within the brain that is challenging to recover from, but not impossible. And so what it's saying is that when you securely attach as a child, it sets off a whole bunch of dynamics inside of your brain, inside of your body, your emotions. And when you're betrayed, all of those get damaged. And those are very, very hard to recover from. So I asked myself, what does being betrayed feel like? And you can make your own list, but let me just get you started on it. Many people who've been betrayed will say, I got stabbed in the back. So I didn't see it coming from the front. It was sneaky. I got stabbed in the back. Others will say, like, I got punched in the gut. It just knocked the wind out of me. It's like the air was taken out of my sails. I got hit by a truck. My heart got ripped out and stomped on. So you're just trying to put into words with metaphors how painful this is. It just sucks the life out of you. Some people say it feels like I died, or it feels like somebody else died. Or some go, it feels like I'm just a pawn in somebody else's chess game. I don't matter. I'm just going to be used to advance their agenda. Others talk about the deep shock, the deep confusion that they feel. Others talk about feeling a deep rage. And then others talk about, it's like nobody's there for me anymore. I feel abandoned. I feel all alone in the world. So what I want you to see from that is like all of those are attempts to put into words some extremely intense painful emotions. And that's what betrayal trauma is, extremely intense pain. So that then leads to, okay, how does a child respond when they begin to figure out that they've been betrayed? So again, what you have to realize is the child thought they were being loved unconditionally, and all of a sudden they realize they're not. That is a hard thing to get your brain around. That is a painful reality, more painful than any other reality that they've experienced in their life so far. So the child has a problem. They are betrayed, but they still need this person because they can't meet all their needs yet. And so they're going through a lot of pain and betrayal. Part of them wants to run away. Part of them wants to shut down, but they need this person. And so they have to adapt in order to still maintain this relationship so they can get their needs met. And that's the challenge for the child is, I need this relationship even though they're betraying me. What do I need to do to maintain the relationship? Because my life depends on it, even though they don't really care about me as much as they say they do. And so there's what you can see right up front is that creates a ton of cognitive dissonance in the mind of a child. They have two conflicting thoughts. The parents are meeting some of my needs, kind of love me, but they don't fully unconditionally love me. Those you can't reconcile. And so you have to live with two dissonant thoughts, which is not fun to live with. It creates pain and tension in your brain because it can't resolve it. And so that's why many children need to live with constant busyness and distractions. Because I don't want to think. I don't want to have quiet time where my brain starts to think about this painful stuff. The second thing a child will do is they will minimize or downplay the severity of the betrayal. Oh, it's not that big a deal. Everybody goes through it. It's not like they do this to me or that to me. And so there's an attempt to reduce the pain by trying to minimize the severity of what's happening to them. Some go so far as to block the betrayal from their mind. And so they develop what is called dissociative amnesia. They don't even think about it. They forget about it. They just block it. Their brain is not allowed to go to that betrayal, that reality in their life, because it's just too painful. And so the child develops ways in their brain to block their brain from ever going there, to ignore them, because they need this relationship. So they can't be honest about this relationship. And then another one, which is slightly different, and really important to understand, is what we call betrayal blindness. So the previous one is you block from your mind that this is even happening. But in betrayal blindness is you refuse to admit the reality about this person. You want to see them with rose-colored glasses because you need them. So there's a blindness that comes from, I need to maintain this relationship at all cost. So I'm going to be blind to what this person is really like or what they're doing. So it's a form of psychological blindness that protects the individual's mental and emotional safety by blocking out what is too painful or too frightening to confront. And so what a child might do is, instead of blaming dad for betraying them, they might go to, well, it's my fault. They blame themselves. I deserved it. I caused it. I shouldn't have done what I did. It's my bad behavior. It's not my parents' fault. That's betrayal blindness. And that happens a lot in complex trauma. And it results in that shame belief that it's me that's the problem. But let me go beyond that. So those are the four most common childhood responses. But what's a bigger picture of how we respond to betrayal as we move into adult life? So I want to break this into different areas. So emotional symptoms. When you've been betrayed, what are common emotional symptoms that you're going to experience? Well, you're going to go through a time of shock, denial, disbelief. So just think of finding out that your partner cheated on you, that your partner's been lying to you, that your partner's been texting somebody else and sharing their heart with somebody else, that your partner spent all your money. You are in shock. You just can't believe it. Then you can go to a deep grief. You are just overwhelmed with a deep sadness, often even a hopelessness. Life just is so negative, painful, dark. But then you can go to that deep anger, rage. Then you can go to just fear. What now? What's going to happen in my life? And everything is scary. And then you can get paranoid and almost have this kind of terror that you live with. Some go to guilt. I must have done something wrong. It's probably my fault. And that's that self-blame stuff that we just talked about. Others go, it triggers their shame at a deep level. See, that proves I'm not worth anything. I'm not lovable. I'm not valuable. If I was, they wouldn't have done this. And so it just reinforces the deep, deep shame messages. Others just go numb. It's too much to take in. They just go to not feeling anything, and they detach from others. They just don't want to be with anybody. They just want to be alone, and they're just numb. Then it can lead to just this haunting loneliness, that the person I thought loved me has betrayed me. I am all alone, and it is overwhelming. And then often a deep feeling of being violated. Then another thing that begins often to happen emotionally with people is after they've been betrayed, they have a great deal of difficulty regulating their emotions. So all of a sudden they have massive mood swings several times a day, or they get triggered and they just go from 0 to 100 in a nanosecond and they can't stop it. So emotional regulation becomes a problem. Others then begin to struggle with depression, anxiety, worry, panic attacks. Some go to this apathy. They lose all motivation for life. The things that they used to enjoy, they don't do anything for them anymore. They're just blah. Some go to suicidal ideation. What's the point of living? And then there's a term that's called alexithymia. And this would come out of a child being betrayed in complex trauma. And it's also called emotional blindness. And so it's a neuropsychological phenomenon characterized by significant challenges in recognizing, expressing, and describing one's own emotions. So this is a person who, as a child, is betrayed. It's too much to deal with, so they just shut down. And they don't feel anymore. And then they disconnect from their emotional world, and they don't even know how to recognize emotions anymore. They don't know what emotions are. They don't even feel emotions. That's alexithymia, and that can happen out of betrayal trauma. Then there's cognitive symptoms of betrayal trauma. And so again, if you've been cheated on, etc., what can happen in the days and months that follow is you can have flashbacks and nightmares. You can relive it. And you can be going through your day and all of a sudden have intrusive thoughts. You just start thinking about it and you didn't even want to think about it, but it just intrudes into your thought life. Another thing is that you can begin to have memory issues. So you forget stuff, short-term stuff. Other people is deep confusion, and it's almost at an existential level, like, what's the purpose of living? Who am I? Do I matter? Who cares about life? All of those questions, deep confusion about where you're going in life, what to do next. It just becomes this very confusing time. And then you can become very difficult to concentrate. And so you get distracted easily. You just can't get focused. That's a common symptom after a person's been betrayed. Then dissociation. It's almost like you feel detached from reality. You're just zombie mode. You go through the motions of life, but you're not there. For some, there's even a sense of time slows down or even stops. They're just not connected to the present. Others then have trouble making decisions. They don't trust their ability to make decisions anymore because they've just been betrayed by somebody they thought they could trust, somebody they decided to trust. And so it really starts to mess up their confidence in making decisions for themselves. And then for many, it unleashes kind of these persistent negative beliefs about life. They get really cynical. They get cynical about themselves, about the world, about people. And so some of the persistent negative stuff can be shame messages. They go right back to the inner critic. It's your fault. You're not good enough. You don't matter. They can't see at that moment that it's made up of all lies because it feels like the truth. Somebody just betrayed me. And so shame messages get louder. And with that is, I guess I'm just a burden to everybody. I guess nobody's ever going to want me. I just don't matter. People only show love to me when it's convenient, when they can get something from me. And those messages spin around. And then you can go to nobody's there for me. Nobody can be trusted in the world. I'm all alone. And that just gets darker and darker. But those are the kind of thoughts that begin to fill the brain and create constant chatter in the brain. Then there's some physical symptoms that can happen after you've been betrayed. And these, I think, are really important to understand. So again, just think you just find out your husband's cheated on you. You can go to physically shaking. And then you can just be constantly agitated. You can't sit still. You can't calm yourself. Your legs jiggling all the time. Then you can just be sweating a lot. Way more than normal. That happens with people. You can then start having panic attacks that come out of nowhere. Some go to either constipation or diarrhea. It just throws off their whole gastrointestinal system. Some insomnia, or they just want to sleep all the time. Some, they get startled really easily. The slightest little thing and they jump. Others find their blood pressure goes up or they have a racing heartbeat. Others, all of a sudden you get aches and pains, you get muscle tension, you get inflammation. All of a sudden that happens. Or you get migraines, headaches that you don't normally get, or you're just tired all the time. So you can sleep all the time or you can't sleep at all, but you're tired all the time. So those are some of the physical symptoms that can happen right after you realize you've been betrayed. That leads to behavioral symptoms that often happen with people that have been freshly betrayed. So I just want to isolate from people. I can't face anybody. I don't want to have to explain. I don't want to have to talk. So I'm going to isolate. And then crying frequently. Just can't stop crying. Decrease in self-care. Don't take care of yourself. Don't shower. Don't eat properly. Don't sleep properly. All of that can happen. Don't do the things that you used to do as healthy self-care or escapes, healthy hobbies. You just can't work as much. And so there's a decrease in your work productivity. There's an increase or decrease in your eating. We've talked about that. For some, there's an increase in aggressiveness, in reactivity. The person says the slightest little thing to you and you go into attack mode and you lash out. That can happen. Others just spend all their time on social media. That just numbs them out. They just scroll through page after page of social media. Others go into just buying stuff. And so they make all kinds of unnecessary purchases. It's a way of numbing. It's a way of getting out of that pain for a while. So others go to alcohol and drugs. It's a way of numbing. It's a way of getting out of the pain. Some go to reckless behavior. They drive radically. They all of a sudden do stuff that potentially is quite risky. They could die, but part of them doesn't care. If I die, I die. And so there's an increase in risky behavior. Then there's relationship symptoms that come out of it, and they're more long-term for people. So they have been betrayed. Now they are looking at starting a relationship again, just a friendship. It's not necessarily romantic, could be, but it's not necessarily. But all of a sudden they find that they're struggling to open up. They're struggling with any kind of deeper intimacy. That just scares them. They can even be suspicious of kindness. So somebody's super kind to them and they go, are they grooming me? What do they want? Is there a hidden agenda here? And so they have huge trust issues. They don't know if they can ever trust again. So they're suspicious of everything. And then if they do get in a relationship, they have difficulty maintaining that relationship. Every little thing the person does, they overanalyze, they look for negative, they look for signs of betrayal, they pull away, they test the other person. And so they have difficulty maintaining relationships. And then if the other person is wanting to get closer and get to know them better, they're not comfortable with that, so they're kind of resisting that or pushing people away. And then they can have jealousy issues. They start to get in a relationship, and every time that person talks to somebody else, it stirs up stuff and they get super jealous, and that can cause trouble. And then they can have a ODD, oppositional defiance. So they get in a relationship and the person says, I think you should do this, or here's what I think we should do. And it's almost like something is triggered inside of them and I want to do the opposite. I am not going to follow anybody's advice. I'm not going to trust anybody's advice. I have to make all my decisions by myself. Then for some, now when they get in a relationship, to them, if I'm not going to be betrayed by you and I'm going to be able to trust you, then there can be no boundaries. You can never say no to me. You can never say you need some personal space. And so they resist boundaries. And boundaries to them proves you aren't loyal, you don't love me, you don't care. So what you can see is betrayal trauma sets a person up to have great difficulty in future relationships. And that is what most people realize is their biggest challenge as they come out of betrayal trauma. There's one other thing that happens with betrayal trauma that includes sexual abuse. And that is there's sexual symptoms in the future. And so there can be an aversion to sex. Sex just makes me feel dirty. Sex makes me feel awful. It's disgusting. And so it just triggers so much painful stuff. I don't want sex. Or if I do have sex, I do it out of obligation. It's not something I enjoy, but I do it out of obligation. Some become just uncomfortable with any physical touch, sexual touch. Doesn't even have to be intercourse. It's just touch me in any way that feels sexual, and I just feel this revulsion inside. Some aren't able to ever achieve orgasm again. Some during sex, they just check out of their body. They feel distant, they dissociate. Others, they regularly have sexual flashbacks, dreams about the sexual abuse, intrusive thoughts about the sexual abuse. Others have actually physical pain in their sexual organs. That is an ongoing thing. And then others have shame, sexual shame about what happened, body shame about what happened. And so there's huge ongoing results or ramifications that come out of betrayal trauma related to sexual abuse. There's one other area that is significant for some, and that's where that betrayal trauma is experienced in your relationship with your higher power, that you feel God has let you down, God has betrayed you. And so all of a sudden you're dealing with anger with God. So these are spiritual symptoms. You blame your higher power for your problems. And so you lose interest in prayer, in meditation, in going to church, in meeting with other people in your spiritual support group. You question everything. You just feel totally abandoned by God. You doubt that God even exists, but yet you fear that God's upset with you and is going to judge you, and that other people in your religion are judging you. And so that's got massive ramifications as well. So I hope you're really getting a feel for the fact that this betrayal trauma is huge, and it has massive ramifications. It's not just painful, it just messes up a whole bunch of life for years and years and years. And so what I hope you begin to realize is, wow, you can heal from this, but it is going to take some work to heal from this. And it's going to take some special tools to heal from this. So what are some of the tools that help people heal from betrayal trauma? And again, I want to emphasize there's no quick fix. Healing from betrayal trauma is a slow process. And it takes consistent work over a period of months and years to begin to heal from this. So number one, acknowledge the betrayal. Don't keep trying to minimize it or avoid it. So you have to start by validating, I was betrayed and it hurt like crazy. So start with that honesty that sees it accurately and acknowledges it. That is painful, but that is the first step in beginning to heal. Secondly, don't blame yourself. For a child to be betrayed is never the child's fault. So don't blame yourself. So develop self-compassion to that child and to yourself today. That is absolutely essential. Now, if you've been betrayed in adult life and you're going back and wanting to heal from being cheated on, your partner having spent all your money and didn't tell you about it, learn from it. Go back and go, why didn't I see the warning signs? Why was I attracted to somebody who's so dishonest and who's like that? What is it that I can learn from so I don't repeat this in adult relationships? And is there something in me that's attracted to somebody like that I need to look at? So turn this into a huge growth opportunity, a time, a chance to really learn. Next thing is, once you fully validate it, see it accurately, expect, okay, now you're going to go through the stages of grief. You're going to go through shock, anger, depression, confusion, bargaining, and then finally reach acceptance. But you're going to go through a process of starting to come to terms with it that's going to take months to get through. But it will follow the stages of grief process. The next thing is, because what happens for children who've gone through betrayal trauma is they have to become blind to what's happened. They have to shut down emotionally, disconnect from the emotions of it. They have to relearn how to feel emotions, identify emotions, accept emotions, value emotions, express emotions. They have to learn emotional intelligence. And so that begins by beginning to practice identifying your emotions, naming your emotions, feeling them in your body, feeling them in your emotional world, and then accepting your emotions. So begin to do that. I want to give a caution here. For a lot of people, when they realize that they've been betrayed, they'll get a response from many well-meaning people that want to pressure them, you need to forgive that person. And my response to that is, don't let somebody pressure you into you need to forgive. It doesn't work. What you need to do is allow yourself to grieve the pain. Allow yourself to process through the pain of that betrayal trauma. Eventually you'll get to forgiveness, but after, it's going to be the result of having worked through all of the pain honestly. And so just be cautious of people that try to rush you to forgive before actually your brain is ready to forgive. The next piece is accept the fact that rebuilding trust and learning how to find safe people is going to be a slow process. You're not going to be able to meet somebody and immediately be able to go, okay, I can trust you 100%. Not after you've been betrayed. You need to gradually get to know a person, and that's going to take months. And you're going to gradually trust them a little bit to see if they're trustworthy. If they are, then you trust them a bit more, and then a bit more, and gradually trust builds. And we don't like that slow process, because when we're in that process, there's an element of the unknown. Are they going to be fully trustworthy? Are they going to maybe still let me down? And we got to sit in this unknown, and we don't like it. But there's no other way to gradually build trust again and have healthy relationships. The next thing is know your triggers. So if you've been betrayed, you've got a whole bunch of things that will trigger those betrayal feelings. And once those betrayal feelings are triggered, then you're going to feel like you're being betrayed again, when probably you're not. But you're triggered and it feels like it, so you think it must be happening. So let's say somebody comes up to you and says, I was just talking to somebody and they talked about you. Somebody's been talking behind my back. They probably were saying negative things. And all of a sudden you feel betrayed, and you think that friend betrayed you by talking to this other friend. They might have just been saying good things about you, but it triggers something. Or let's say somebody you've known for a while all of a sudden reveals a secret to you that they haven't shared before. And you feel like they've been betraying you by having not revealed that secret before, because that's what happened in your past. But maybe they hadn't revealed that secret because they weren't sure they could fully trust you yet. But it feels like betrayal. Or let's say somebody confronts you and they speak the truth about what you're doing and that it's not right. Well, that feels like they don't have your back. That feels like they're turning against you. They're not loyal. That feels like betrayal. Or let's say you're getting to know a friend and you really like this friend, and all of a sudden you see them over having a chat, a deep conversation with somebody else. That triggers the feelings of betrayal. Or somebody is super nice to you. That triggers feeling like you're being groomed. And so know your triggers, because your triggers put you in your limbic brain, which has distorted reasoning and lies. And so if you realize I'm being triggered, you can get back to your cortex and say, that's what I feel, but what is the truth? And that becomes very, very important. The final thing is, if you've gone through betrayal trauma, hopefully you realize this is a big, big topic with huge ramifications into every area of life. I would really encourage you to get help, professional help. Get into a program like our LIFT program, and we deal with this stuff all the time. Get to a therapist who understands betrayal trauma, a support group where you can talk with others who understand betrayal trauma. All of that is so important in healing from this. You often can't do it totally alone. You need professional help. Now, I just give you a caution that one of the things that if you get in a support group, which I hope you will, is that then you can be in danger of trauma bonding. So you find out somebody else that's betrayed deeply in similar ways to you, and you have a connection, and all of a sudden you go, oh, I just feel so close to this person, but they're messed up, you're messed up, and you get in this relationship and then you get betrayed again. So just be aware of trauma bonding that can take place between two people that have gone through betrayal trauma. Well, this has been a tough topic, but I hope it's been insightful, because you can't understand complex trauma unless you understand that it includes betrayal trauma, and it is painful stuff with far-reaching impact. That's the end of our time.